Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and thank you all for your attendance here. I am Deputy Mayor Adam Pearson, and I will be chairing this public meeting tonight. I'm joined here by staff and members of council. We have Councillor Les, Councillor Todd, Councillor Claire, Councillor Toms, and Mayor Olena. I'd like to start this off with a moment of silence. Thank you. So to begin, our land acknowledgement. The municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe traditional territories covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and the waters in which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respects with elders past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. Moving on to declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any from council tonight? Noting I received none beforehand. Seeing none. So we're here tonight for two public meetings that are held in accordance with the provision of the Planning Act. These public meetings are a prescribed requirement under the Act and represent only one component of the planning and development process. Please note that no decisions will be made at tonight's meeting. The format of today's public meeting are as follows. First, the applicant or their representative will provide an overview of the application and the policy framework review. Then, municipal staff will provide an overview of the technical review and public consultation. Council members may ask questions of staff or provide comments at this time. Finally, members of the public who wish to provide input will be able to do so by coming up to the podium. Alternatively, you can also provide input via written submission to planning@porthope.ca. Please note, as the chair, I may call upon the applicant or staff for clarification on matters raised by members of the public. I would like to note that there are sign-in sheets near the entrance. I have noticed that most people have already signed in, which is wonderful. If you want to be notified when a notice of decision is issued, please ensure that you fill out the sign-in sheets with all of your information. So moving on to public meeting number 1. It is now time to commence our first public meeting for this evening. The first application is regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, file ZB02-2024, under section 3410.4 of the Planning Act, submitted by Martindale Planning Services on behalf of owner 2640573 Ontario Corp. For lands municipally known as 39 Pine Street North within the urban area of the municipality of Port Hope. I would like to note that council members are not here tonight to express their opinions for or against proposed changes. The time for that will come when the matter is brought forward for consideration at a future meeting of the Committee of the Whole. So I'm going to ask the applicant to please come up and make their presentation.
Good afternoon or evening, as preference may be. I'm Bob Martindale, Principal of Martindale Planning Services, and I'm representing the owner of the property. I'm going to show a slideshow, which I think you'll be starting. This, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay, starting with the location map. of the subject property, known as the Globe Cambridge High School, and it's at the southeast corner of Pine Street North and South Street. This is an overall map of Port Hope. This shows a detailed location, and you can see from this that it's 2 blocks north of Walton Street, the main commercial street of Port Hope, at the southeast corner of Pine Street and North Street. This is an aerial view of the property, obviously taken in the summer or spring, where the north, you can see the Pine Street on the left side of the screen, and extending to the right of Pine Street is South Street. So the property is located at the southeast corner of Pine and South Streets. North Street, sorry, North Street. Right. This is the front elevation of the building, and we have different views of the front from different angles. This is obviously taken from Pine Street North. This is the site plan and rendering. Site plan on the left, the rendering in the middle of the screen. The gray building on the site plan is obviously the existing schoolhouse, and the light brown building is the proposed dormitory at the southeast corner of the property. This is an enlarged view of the rendering of the proposed dorm. It's 5 stories, 28 rooms altogether, with provision to accommodate 80 students. The Port Hope official plan showing the location of the property and a blow-up of the plan. Sorry, I thought there was going to be a blow-up of the plan, but anyway, this is the zoning schedule showing the location of the property at the southeast corner of Pine Street and North Street. I've outlined applicable planning policies here. The only provincial planning policy statement left is now the PPS, or provincial planning statement, and the proposal conforms to those policies. The proposal conforms to the Northumberland County official plan. Property is designated on that plan as urban area, and it conforms to the Port Hope official plan. The designation on the Port Hope OP is major institutional. Zoning compliance. The proposal compliance with all applicable zoning requirements except for minimum parking requirements. The zoning bylaw requires 17 parking spaces, and we're providing 16 parking spaces. So we've requested relief from this requirement through the zoning amendment application. Here's a list of supporting studies and plans. They include architectural drawings, soil, groundwater, and methane investigation, scoped environmental impact assessment, arborist report and tree protection plan, cultural heritage impact assessment, stage 1 archaeological investigation, servicing and grading plan, geotechnical investigation, school building floor plan, hydrogeological study, and shadow study. The justification for the application basically is that the proposed dormitory is essential to the viability of the school, given the number of out-of-town and international students attending it. The dormitory is designed to be a separate and distinct architectural form from the school, so it doesn't compete with or duplicate the design of the heritage building. It would be situated well below the grade of the school and not directly behind it, but in reality, it'll be in the southeast corner of the property. And in my opinion, it will not compete with or detract from the heritage characteristics of the school or the neighborhood. My planning opinion, as a professional planner, the application rezoning conforms with the official plan, generally is in accordance with the applicable zoning provisions other than those noted in the proposed bylaw amendment, and represents good planning. Just wonder if there are any questions at this point.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I'm going to open it up to council. Are there any questions from members of council? No, seeing none. Thank you for your presentation. And moving on to 4.2, the presentation by staff. I'm going to ask the planning staff to make their presentation and introduce the report, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amir Salahuddin, and I'm Planner 1 here at the Municipality of Port Hope. Oh, okay. Can you guys hear me now? Can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. So I'm Amir Salahuddin. I'm the Planner 1 here at the Municipality of Port Hope. I'll present on zoning application ZB02 2024. So getting started here with the subject property, I'll just briefly describe the surrounding land uses surrounding 39 Pine Street North. To the north, the site is surrounded by low-density residential neighborhoods. To the east, it's also primarily low-density residential, with one 6-story apartment further east. To the east, there is institutional uses including St. John's Anglican Church, Port Hope United Church, along with low-density residential neighborhoods, and two three-story apartments further south. To the west, the area continues as low-density residential neighborhoods. So in terms of public consultation, under the Planning Act tools, the municipality issued residential mailouts and on-site public notice sign. Under the non-statutory tools, a notice was also posted on the municipal website. Notice of complete application and public meeting was issued on January 14, 2026, and the site sign was posted on January 15, 2026. Post-publication of the meeting agenda, a total of 20 residents have provided comments with concerns and opposition to the proposal, which was compiled and provided to council this morning. The overarching themes and concerns expressed by residents include building height, heritage impacts, traffic flow issues as North Street is a one-way street, sidewalk and pedestrian safety, noise and vibration affecting adjacent properties, exterior lighting concerns, privacy issues, and private garbage collection. We continue to accept and review comments as part of the public record. Here I'll provide a summary of technical circulation comments received by staff and agencies. Full comments have been provided in the agenda and public meeting report as an attachment. So bear with me here while I go through all these comments. Starting with municipal planning staff, the proposal is short by 3 required short-term bicycle parking spaces, and this deficiency must be addressed and corrected in the draft bylaw. Planning also identified a few minor errors and is requesting a revised bylaw to address them. In addition, staff noted that the existing school is considered legal non-complying and that legal non-complying provisions may be included in the draft bylaw to help bring the property into compliance. From the Municipal Building Division, no building matrix was provided, limiting staff's ability to comment on the Ontario Building Code requirements. Additional requirements may be required due to the height of the building. Under the Ontario Building Code, a fire route is required within 15 meters of at least 25% of the building parameter and must be a minimum turning radius of 12 meters measured from the center line. The water table appears to be only 1.6 meters below the proposed footing, which the structural engineer must consider in their foundation design. Finally, the existing geotechnical report references 2012 OBC, Ontario Building Code, and needs to be updated to align with 2024 Ontario Building Code. From the Ganaraska Conservation Authority, the site is not regulated, but the GRCA reviewed the stormwater management report and was found to be generally acceptable, with some modification and additional details to be addressed at site plan stage. Municipal Works and Engineering. The Municipal Works and Engineering staff identified that the new driveway onto North Street will require sidewalk reconstruction and a traffic brief is required. Engineering also noted that sanitary and stormwater connection must conform to and be authorized under the environmental compliance approval. From Alderville First Nations, the Alderville First Nations requested that consultation proceed in accordance to their consultation protocol. Lexicon Engineering requested a consultation process. Canadian Nuclear Laboratories provided no objections to the proposal. From Municipal Environmental Services, staff noted that given the scale and amenities of the building, the existing 6-inch lateral may be undersized and an 8-inch lateral may be more appropriate. They also recommended a more detailed flow study assess the impacts on the existing sanitary system. From Municipal Fire and Emergency Services, staff confirmed that the proposed height is classified as a high building, which triggers additional requirements for fire protection requirements. They also note that municipal water supply needs to be evaluated in more detail for fire suppression. Northumberland County, according to Waste Bylaw 08-2023, private waste services would be required. Overall, the county stated they have no objections to the zoning bylaw amendment. Here's a quick summary of the peer reviews completed for key technical studies. Environmental impact assessment, the reviewer notes a revised EIS is required to address potential for individual trees to serve as roosting habitats for species at-risk bats. Cultural heritage impact assessment, the reviewer notes that a revised cultural heritage impact assessment is required to demonstrate alignment with the PPS 2024 policies 4.6.1 and 4.6.3. Arborist report and tree protection plan, the reviewer had no objections. Landscape plan, a revised landscape plan is required to address comments to ensure coordination with site plan, grading plan, and servicing plan. Geotechnical investigation, the reviewer indicated that the key structural and grading details were not available at the time of the original investigation, and a revised geotechnical report is required. They also noted groundwater elevations may be incorrect, and a revised report should include the recommendations for installation of utility services. So for the next steps following the public meeting, the process is shown here. First, the applicant would address the comments received through public consultation and agency circulation. Next, staff will prepare a recommendation report, which will assess policy consistency and conformity and consider all public comments received. The report then will be reviewed by the Committee of Whole meeting to determine whether the application proceeds to Council for final decision. After that, the Council will make a decision. If approved, the notice of decision is issued and a 20-day appeal period begins. Before closing, I will highlight a change related to appeal rights. For zoning bylaw amendment application, resident appeal rights have been removed by the province through Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act 2022. Under the Planning Act framework, only prescribed persons and specified bodies have appeal rights under these types of ZBA applications. This means while the public input remains critical and is carefully considered by staff and council, the ability to file third-party appeal rights is restricted under the current provincial rules. So just to highlight here, this is the site plan drawing for the 5-story student dormitory. Just to note, there's a total of 16 parking spaces proposed, and there's 7 parking spaces that are existing on the site. Was there anything else? Good. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to open up to council. Are there any questions of staff? Mayor Elena.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm just wondering if for the general public, you can elaborate on who can in fact appeal this so that everybody understands what the definition is.
Through the chair, to answer the question to the mayor, the specific bodies and parties are defined in the Planning Act and include utilities, county, GRCA, and so on. So the public is not included in that definition.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from council? Seeing none. Okay, moving on to submissions from members of the public. So before we begin the submissions from the public, I would like to note that the staff report outlines the changes, as we were just talking about, in the Planning Act, that has changed the public's ability to appeal a decision on a zoning bylaw amendment application to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Only the applicant and the specified persons as defined by the Planning Act, a public body as defined by the Planning Act, and a registered owner of the land to which the bylaw would apply has the ability to appeal the eventual decision of the municipality of Port Hope to the Ontario Land Tribunal. This means that residents' appeals rights for zoning bylaw amendments have been removed by the province. Members of the public may provide comments or questions related to this application tonight or any time prior to a decision being made by council. Please email planning@porthope.ca to provide your comments to staff if you do not provide them tonight. All of those who wish to speak to this matter tonight, approach the microphone and clearly state your name and your address for the record, please. I also want to remind those of you in attendance, but especially those looking to speak this evening, please ensure that you complete the sign-in sheet near the entrance before you leave. The sheet assists municipal staff as it provides a record of attendance and the contact information if a copy of the notice of decision is requested. So at this point, if anybody has any comments, please come up to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Danita Lewis.
Just a little bit closer to the mic, please.
My name is Danita Lewis. I live at 36 South Street with my husband, Stuart. He's unable to be here for work commitments. I'm not used to public speaking, so bear with me. I'm here to present some statements. I'm not sure if this is the right way to do it or not, but I just wanted to start off by saying that on the 13th of May in 2003, this council received from Heather Kenny at TVO a plaque for the best preserved Main Street in Ontario. And when she did so, she stated, Port Hope has some of the most beautiful architecture in the province, which has been preserved lovingly intact. And from that, I am going to carry forward to another plaque, which is present in the sidewalk on the northeast corner of Pine and Walton, dedicated to a distinguished citizen, Alice Sculthorpe, who the Waterfront Trail is named after, if you recognize the name. She was many accomplishments, and she served as president of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. There's still family members here present in Port Hope. Her descendants are here as well. And she was very instrumental in the best preserved Main Street actually coming to be as it is today. I was told by her daughter-in-law that she in fact stood in front of a wrecking ball and a record to discourage them from tearing down the building that was designated to be torn down. And she was successful. She didn't want to leave until she was reassured that the council would readdress the decision. That was then. I know protocols are different now. However, I just wanted to bring it forward how important it is from our perspective that it be addressed for the impact, the negative impacts for related to the architectural factors of the community. The 5-story design in no way conforms with the local historic architecture or design. We live in a community that was incorporated in 1790. It's actually been here longer than Canada, technically. And we we have 285 designated historical properties, which is the largest number of designated historical properties per capita in Canada. So I think this is something that we really need to keep in mind. And the fact that this building that's being proposed, in my opinion, in no way conforms to the historical component of the buildings. There's a large percentage of historically designated buildings in the community that are relevant to the site that's been proposed for rezoning. Specifically, there's numbers 71, 83, 89, and 90 Brown Street, and 33, 36, 39, and 41 South, which is in due proximity to the building. You can look at the subject lands map to see the proximity. The building that's being proposed is a 5-story. In my opinion, it's a monolithic pagoda-shaped building, which in no way conforms or complements to the local architecture or style. That's just my opinion. And there are some issues that I'd just like to quickly bring forward. I know time is of the essence, so I'll try and do my best to do it quickly. My first negative impact is the 5-story industrial design in no way conforms or complements local historic architecture or style. The potential for destruction of heritage attributes as a result of accidental damage or vibration exposure during construction, with the factor of the pile drivers with the disturbance of the underground earth. A lot of the older homes here, the Victorian homes and even older homes, their foundations in no way conform to local building codes, obviously, from what it is today. They're large boulders that are held in place with mortar and cement, and if you have a lot of impact going on, it's not unlike a small earthquake going through the ground, which would impact the viability of the homes there. As I said, some of these homes are 19th century, so they've been around a while. The height of the proposed impact 3, the height of proposed development is not in keeping with the proposed height for new development, and the guidelines for height difference with neighboring properties is defined by, and what I'm giving you is JOQ SHCD, which is relevant to the home on, or pardon me, the building on proximal to the Carlisle Hotel, but the guidelines are the same in how they affect it. The streets are different, but it's the same application, I suggest. And impact 4 is the shadow factor. I have here a picture of the town, and you can see this as I superimposed the 5-story building on top. I'm sorry I don't have a bigger picture. I don't have a printer that'll take it, but it's the best I can do. But I wanted to just bring it to show you from our perspective, from the residents' perspective, what this is for the shadow effect. The sun comes up in the east and sets in the west. So the shadow that will be cast, this is the St. John's Anglican Church and the Sunday school. You can't tell, but there's a space in between here that's used by the school, the church. They grow vegetables in the summer for the community. You need sunlight to grow vegetables. There will be a shadow cast in this area. The children attend summer camps, mid-year camps, and Sunday school where they use this area. They'll still be using that area, but it won't be in the sunshine during the day, obviously, during the day. There won't be any sunshine going through the stained glass windows of this church. The people that live here on Brown Street, all along here, they won't be getting any sunshine through their windows. They sit in their backyard, and they won't be getting any sunshine in their backyard either, because the sun will be coming from here down this way. So I think that's a relevant factor for the enjoyment of life and people enjoying their homes. And finally, the impact, like fifth impact, potential negative impact, is for privacy. If you have a 5-story building in the center of this community, this is South Street. Sorry, this is South Street and Walton and the surrounding community. You have a 5-story building looking down upon you all. There will be no privacy for the people that are directly affected from South Street and anyone proximal on Brown Street as well. If you sit in your yard, they're all going to be looking down at you. If you look out your window, they're all going to be looking into you. So I feel that's a relevant factor for our homes. I feel that we are stewards of our century homes, and the proposed building in no way conforms or contributes to its history or beauty from years past or to the future. We are also stewards for this community. It's not just our individual home, it's a community as a whole because of what we know from what this town has given us. And a lot of people have relocated to this town for what it has offered. And if this is what is going to be present, if we wanted to live next door to a 5-story brick building, then we would have chosen to live in Toronto, quite frankly. And living in a historically designated building, we're not even allowed to change the paint on our building without designated permission. And we have an issue with why we're curious why such a controversial 5-story modern building could be proposed for this richly historical area. Does it mean that this proposed building does get in fact built and our homes, ours plus all my neighbors and the people in our community would therefore definitely would be depreciated value? Does this mean that we could maybe expect our taxes to be depreciated too? I don't know, but I think it's a relevant fact. I think that we would actually have a depreciated value on our home with that. And also, I've noticed that, I've thought about it, if you've ever walked up from Cavan Street and you go up South Street, that is a hill. It is a hill. It's taken a lot of training to get used to going up that hill. And so the 5-story building, yes, it's a 5-story building, but it's also on an elevated area. So it actually will present a higher profile within the community. If you go anywhere in Port Hope, you're going to see that 5-story building sticking out amongst all the beautiful spires of the churches in the community and the homes and the Victorian homes, the older homes that give it the character and the substance to which we're so proud of. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And for somebody who doesn't do very much public speaking, you did a wonderful job, so thank you for that. Any other to the podium?
It's on. Chris Wallace, Walton Street. I want to talk about height. I didn't notice anything about a height variance, and I'm kind of surprised at that. 5 stories. I would like to get clarification of exactly where the baseline is from which that height is measured, because I need to be convinced. To me, 5 stories is seriously pushing it. And the other factor in height is the heritage guidelines, which specifies 4 stories maximum. I know the zoning bylaw goes in meters, not in number of stories, but I think both of those have to be looked at. One way to judge the height is to basically look at all 4 street elevations with the existing buildings drawn up to scale and see exactly where it is, where that height is relative to the other buildings, and also projecting the angle of view lines from the far side of each one of those streets. And then we can actually see what the impact of the height is. Now we're just going on blind faith that it's going to be fine. In terms of impact, it impacts the entire city block. I think the site plan should show the entire city block so that people can actually see the relative relationship of that building to the houses on Brown Street, to the back of the church and Church Hall, for example. And with the site plan for the entire block and the elevations from all 4 streets, then we actually will have the whole picture and can judge it fairly. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask if everybody could refrain from clapping, please. We try not to have that in the council chambers. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you.
Good evening, Curtis Brisbois, Brown Street. Randomly, light pollution. Will the lights be on 24 hours a day from the school to light up? Secondly, fire regulations. Could council ask the fire department to propose a budget of what it's going to cost to service this building up and above what's here now existing? Because it's going to fall down on my lap. You know, we need a new fire truck, we need a new aerial truck, we need whatever, more people. I would like that. And the third one is a traffic survey. It was brought to my attention earlier today that it seems to me that everything is forced east. Brown, north, Seymour, south, nothing on Pine. It's just there. My big fear would be that no parking signs would go up on Pine Street. Because if teachers and people visiting the school and students and everything start blocking up Pine Street, it could be a situation where they put up parking signs. Brown Street is very limited in its parking now with the new construction, etc. Nobody obeys the law on that street. They park on both sides, depending on what, it doesn't matter to residents on Brown Street what's going on. So if we compound that now with God knows what, anyway, those are some of my concerns. The light pollution I would like to address. We're a little bit further away from the proposed school or addition. Also, my last comment is that there's plenty of room there to chop this thing down to 4 stories. There's plenty of room. I think a little bit of effort there might go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Trish Dryden. I'm at 41 South Street. And thank you for holding this public meeting. Firstly, I would like to thank our great neighbor, Danita, for actually doing such an amazing job of bringing our concerns forward as residents to this plan. I want to speak now from my experience as an AVP at Centennial College before I retired. We built a lot of student residences. And we built them on property that was appropriately set up to build them, so that the casting of light, the density of parking, all the kinds of complexities that you can see in these student residences were addressed, as well as it wouldn't be a heritage piece, because Centennial College would not show that, but what it would show is how you address the issues when you're building a student residence of the complexity of water, light, services for the students themselves, so that this is ideal settings. And I realize we're not at that stage of development, but I bring it forward as a concern because in a building that is set to house potentially 80 students, that is a lot of complexity to deal with in what is a very small overall heritage area. And you're not kidding about the height issues. When you go anywhere in Port Hope, if you do a proper height study, you will see that this building will stand out above all others. And wouldn't it be wonderful if that building looked like any of the others or showed some at least acknowledgement of the complex nature of a heritage environment and also of the environmental impact, which I think has been lightly looked at and not seriously looked at, because the grade of that hill, the height of that building, the complexity of the needs of students, which should be addressed here. I know that comes along later in these proposals, but I don't see anything in this proposal that would reassure me that students are at the center of this proposal, that residents are acknowledged in this proposal, and that the neighborhood itself, the character of the neighborhood, would be preserved. This is not a statement about us not needing student residences in Port Hope. Of course we do. And of course we need to attract students. But this building in no way comes close to addressing those issues. And I ask you to consider carefully and for all the team here to really look carefully at this application. And if you look at other institutions like colleges who erect buildings all the time, there is so much more complexity than is being dealt with here, but particularly the issue of height and the residential issue of heritage value in this whole in the properties that are there. So thank you for your consideration in this and to give it some very, very careful thought, because we are going to be, if this goes forward, we will be living with a very odd building in the middle of a very beautiful place. Thank you.
My name's Gord Angus. I live on Seymour Street, and I was wondering about the, I read there was going to be a new roadway into what used to be Central School's playground. And I was just wondering how much more traffic impact that's going to be on North Street. The west part of North Street is a one-way. Is that going to go back to two-way? And that's my main concern, really, because I'm just wondering about traffic impact. Thank you.
No? Oh, there. Just speak loudly. Okay. Good evening. My name is Bob Harrison. I'm a neighbor here. I live on North Street, 55 Pine Street North, the new house that's just at the corner there. There are many aspects of this proposed zoning bylaw that have aroused the interests of many of our neighbors, myself included, that find the proposal objectionable. This includes the design of the dormitory itself, its height, and its architectural design. The anticipation of traffic, which we just talked about a moment ago, congestion of traffic on North Street, I imagine would be unbelievable. Student parking in the property, the allowance suggests that none of these students are going to have any cars. I would think that that's quite an incorrect assumption, and there won't be anywhere near enough parking for students to have their cars there. And then the fourth aspect of the dormitory is that there's going to be a continuous 24 hours a day presence of 80 unsupervised teenagers living together in a little hole. However, although I agree with all of those, I'm also concerned with another aspect of the proposal. That is the heritage impact of the proposal to construct a modern 5-story dormitory on the grounds of the former Central Public School. It was designated as a heritage property in 2017. Within 2 blocks of this student dormitory, that's as far north as Bedford, down to Brown, and up to Pine, are well over 30 designated properties, including many, many, many private homes, at least 1 church, a school, and an apartment building, as well as a significant portion of the Walton Street designated heritage district. This is a lot of heritage properties. The planning justification report, dated March 2025, referred to a cultural heritage impact assessment report prepared by Martindale. But there's no reference in any of the documentation that we received in anticipation of this bylaw review talking about it. What were their conclusions? How did they reach them? Have we yet sought any input from the Port Hope Heritage Advisory Committee, or any input from the Port Hope branch of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. Both of those organizations should have some input to the early phases of this project before huge amounts of time are spent designing it. I believe that these issues of heritage impact need to be assessed and dealt with in their entirety before this bylaw proceeds any further. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi there, it's Lee Caswell from 8 Baldwin Street. Not right next door, but close enough. I have a problem with the building, how do I say it, being sort of a one-use only situation. I don't see how it could be amended for use in the future should this not be a school and dormitory situation. If they were set up as apartments, they could be used as senior apartments in the future or whatever. School is presently unused. I don't know what the thought process is, whether they're going to reopen or not, but it's asking a lot of an institution that's not opened, I believe. One has to just look at the apartment buildings that were built on the corner of Brown and South Street in terms of what kind of an impact they have had on heritage buildings nearby. There was at that time, I understand they were built 30 or 40 years ago. I remember them being built as a kid, but they bear no resemblance or pay no homage to nearby buildings at all. And they've clogged up that neighborhood. There's a good example of the parking. It's kind of a nightmare around there for residents to park. A couple of other things that weren't mentioned. You mentioned St. John's Church, and we didn't mention the church hall nor the manse, which are all three intact, which is kind of rare. The United Church next door sold off their manse a few years back. I sold the darn thing. But anyway, it's a interesting site that I believe Central School was our prettiest school in town. I'm really disappointed the town didn't get involved in owning it or at least directing its use way back when. That ship has sailed, I know. But the other thing I'm thinking about is the parking off North Street, which is a sort of substandard little street, and there's a bit of a back lane along there. I know that it's very tight in there. Unless they move the retaining wall, I don't see how they're going to get cars coming and going. I know, and there's an elevation change, which anything can be dealt with, I understand. But anyway, I just don't know if the parking is going to be enough, as people have mentioned tonight. I think that's about it. But North Street, as somebody has since corrected, is a funny street that's partially two-way, and then at the western portion is just a one-way street. So it's sort of a substandard thing anyway. That's why they made it one way. So I'm kind of wondering how that's going to fare out with things. Anyway, thank you for that.
Hello, Michael Penny, 33 South Street. I just wanted to bring up that my house is a good example of the effect that a project like this will have on everybody else's heritage houses in the neighborhood. My house at 33 South is the Grange, and it was built in 1832, and it used to have a large front lawn that was just mentioned, had an apartment building built on it years ago. The property had been severed, and they wanted to build apartments, which would have been fine, but the way that they built them took up the entire lot except for the pavement. There's no green space at all. And it came as close up to the front of my house, which wasn't my house at the time, but as it could be. And the people who lived in the house before me bought it before that happened. They lived there for many years, and when they passed away and the house was sold, it wouldn't sell. It sat on the market for a really long time. And the price was depreciated and depreciated until someone like me could afford it. But it should have been worth a lot more. When we bought it, houses that were comparable in the area were a lot more expensive than ours, because anyone who wanted to buy that house and could appreciate how beautiful it was in its history wouldn't put up with a building in its face looking down on it, which is what it does. And it has very bright lights in the parking area that are on at nighttime. And thankfully, because our house is old, it has those interior wooden shutters. So my kids can sleep at night and it's not an issue. But that's kind of crazy that you have to have that. And so I think the fact that the first time our house went on the market after those buildings were there, it really affected the value and it didn't sell for over a year, when it's like one of the prime, most beautiful houses in Port Hope, shows that everybody else who has a house now is going to have their value greatly affected after this is built. So that's that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm sorry. I forgot to mention something that I feel is relevant. Is there's been a reference made to the school itself, the Globe Cambridge School. In fact, it is not technically, it is closed. In their Facebook, on their webpage, they have acknowledged that that school is closed. They have a school they've set up and built in Toronto. So my question is, why are they planning to build or trying to build a residence for a school that they're not even using? And also the resident that they had on Walton Street is for sale as well. So there's inconsistencies there, and I just wanted to bring that forward. I don't understand why the lack of transparency with what's going on and what their intention really is for that building. Is it in fact going to be a residence, or as so many other people have said, is it for other purposes that they're going to be building this, which does have relevance to the houses around and the community itself. And one small item too that is it's personal, obviously, but the plans show that building that is being proposed is actually only, as I said, 7.5 meters from our property line. And the way that they've laid out the plan for I don't know whether that's firm or not, or it's flexible, but the way they've laid it out, there's a lot of things that will directly affect our quality of life in our home, with respect to, for example, the garbage collection, which is designated to be next to the corner of our property. The noise factor, the light factor for building, as was mentioned by Mr. Penny, the lighting. We don't have shutters on the inside of our windows, but we have to put up blackout curtains because of the lighting from those buildings, the apartment buildings that he was alluding to for the parking lot. So I'm sure it'll be the same for this building too. There'll be a lot of lights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Erin Brown. I live at 116 Bruton Street, and I sell real estate in this town. I hadn't planned on saying anything tonight, and I agree with most of the comments that have been made about Heritage District and everything else. My mother lived at 29 North Street for many years, and that house is right up against the retaining wall with the laneway. And I cannot imagine what it will be like putting access in right next to that property off North Street, because there is quite a height difference there. And that retaining wall concerns me because most of that property is surrounded by retaining wall. And I happen to know from having put a playground into that yard at one time that yard is full of crane waste. It's not going to be an easy dig. But mostly I wanted to say that there's many pictures of Port Hope of our church spires taken from the east side of the river. And there are locations on the east side of Port Hope where you get an iconic picture of Port Hope and its church spires, its historic churches in that neighborhood. And I just can't imagine ruining that picture by putting a 5-story building up that will be probably the same height or as tall as the spires between the St. John spires and the United Church spires. I think it's something that, as a community that values its heritage, we really need to think about how that looks for us. Are we going to be photoshopping it out of pictures till time immemorial? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other from the public?
Chris Wallace, Walton Street, 2 last quick points. I think we need to remember that tonight is all about zoning. It's not about architecture, because the illustration of the building they had, quite frankly, is ugly. And a lot of people have talked about the lack of heritage character in the building. We still have to go through that process. It needs a heritage process. It needs a reworked heritage impact assessment. It needs a heritage permit from HPH, presumably with the support of ACO. So I wouldn't worry about that yet. We've still got that battle to fight. Last quick point, Doug Ford's decision to disallow any kind of appeal, quite frankly, is disgusting.
Thank you. Appreciate. Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none. Okay, moving on. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
My name is Heather Burnett, and I live at 16 Bruton Street. And as per usual, I'm doing things by the seat of my pants. But the appeal that I'm making now, I realize this is a zoning meeting, but I think that we have to look. I'm a newbie in Port Hope. I've just been here 13 years, so that I won't even live long enough to be a Port Hoper. But I have to say, I think all of us are Port Hopers. And it's not a case of NIMBYism. I know that the kids have been at the school. I am kitty corner from the school, and people were worried about 80 teenagers full of hormones and other things. These kids, I want to go out sometimes, the kids that have been at the school, and say, get a life, you know. They're wonderful kids, but I don't ever see them transgressing in any way. But I'm also a member of St. John's Church, and I'm surprised there's not anybody here from St. John's. I see somebody from St. John's, but he's not speaking. So I'm going to get up and speak and say that it is a very vibrant church in the community. It does have the Sunday school. It does have the gardens. It does have a summer camp that is filled to overflowing. This is what we want in our neighborhood, the same as we want these beautiful old homes. It's not a case of NIMBYism. But I know Mr. Penny's house very well, and it's gorgeous inside. It makes me want to weep when I go by and see the desecration of that front lawn. So I just think we should all remember that our communities, my family did go to Coburg in 1830, so I'm an old Coburg person, very old. And it is just a shadow of its former self. Let's welcome young people in our community, but let's keep our community mindful of what we have to offer in the big picture of preserving Ontario heritage, as well as making it a welcoming place. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the community? Yes, absolutely, you can.
Hi, everyone.
But we are.
Hadn't planned to be here.
If you could say your name. And
Andra Zondervan, 29 North Street.
Thank you.
Hadn't planned to be here, was drinking a glass of wine, was watching on YouTube, and decided, you know what, I'm going to come without lipstick and give you a little bit of an insight as to what I think is going on here. Bob, where are you? Bob Martindale? Anyone else from your contingency here tonight? Excellent. So here's the thing. I've done a deep dive for 20 days. Deep dive on what's going on. And so if you don't know about 29 North Street, I'm the only property that has the full line that goes against the property line of the lot line 39 North Street. So I have full vantage of the backyard. I've got full vantage of everything that's going on, and I'm Mrs. Kravitz. Just saying. There's a lot going on here, and there's not a lot not going on here. But as we take a look at what's being put in front of us, it's instrumental not only to our neighborhood and my community, but for the community called Port Hope. Amir, thank you. You've done an amazing job. You've done an amazing job in touching base with me. This is a big deal, folks. If this is not precedent setting, I don't know what is. I moved to Port Hope in 2017 for heritage, for privacy, for my retirement. In the last week, I have walked a brochure to over 107 properties in our neighborhood outside of the concentric circle, which is 120 meters by planning process. That includes Bedford Street and Upper Brown Street. My community is 80% retired at different levels. I'm probably on the lower end. Some people are on the other end. We don't have technology. And since we have actually put this in place and received a notification on January the 19th, we've had 5 storms. We have got people that are in health issues. We have got technological issues. And so if you don't hear everything from everybody, it's because we're challenged in a couple of different areas. I've done a deep dive. I've read everything. And it's concerning to me that we're going to put a dormitory in a heritage designated property. I've got major concerns. Heritage and strategic alignment, for one. It does not align to the Port Hope's vision and strategic plan, particularly with respect to heritage, economic growth, community culture, and recreation as outlined in the Pillars 1 of those goals. The modern design of the dormitory contrasts with Port Hope's heritage, character, and commitment to preservation. 39 North Street is a heritage designated under Part 5 under the Heritage Act. This designation confers to special status, registration on property title, and protection of architectural, contextual, and historical aspects. There are no less than 15 designated properties within our surrounding residential area, underscoring the significance of maintaining the neighborhood's historic integrity. With respect to the applicant, dubbed architecturally in conformance to the school, has no bearing on architectural conformity to our community. Community impact. A residents' first approach is advocated in review of the amendment. The need for housing for temporary foreign students, residents, should not overshadow the interests of Port Hope owners who are invested in the community and our future. The proposed height of a 5-story dormitory and its rooftop in a low-rise residential area will directly affect neighboring homeowners on Brown Street, South Street, and North Street, raising concerns around privacy, shadowing, and interfering with sightlines. Primary privacy concerns, the dormitory's overlook and pedestrian traffic of 80 students are heightened in the retention of existing metal link fence and retaining wall as indicated in the planning site. Shadow study and loss of light. Homeowners on Brown Street will be impacted with shadow effects varying seasonality throughout the day part, specifically on properties 44, 46, 29, 54, and 50 Brown Street. 29 North Street, I'm looking into their backyard. They're now looking into mine and my neighbors. The building design and height, the scale and contemporary design of the proposed dormitory are incompatible with the surrounding low-rise residential environment and heritage properties. Height comparison charts illustrate the disproportionate impact of a 5-story building adjacent to 2-story homes. The dormitory's architectural design and massing does not support the preservation of Port Hope's historical character. Environmental concerns. Requests for assessment and reporting by the Port Hope Area Initiative. Where are we? Got lots of questions. Traffic and operational concerns. The proposed new entry and access to the dormitory from North Street is expected to increase traffic volume and disrupt quiet residential neighborhoods, particularly along Bedford Street, Brown Street, Seymour Street, Pine Street North, North Street, and South Street. Both construction and operational phases will amplify service and delivery activity, including larger and more frequent vehicles beyond what is typical of the area. Traffic study, there isn't one. Project time, there isn't one. Specific street leaf challenges include snow removal. If we never knew anything outside of the 15 storms that we've experienced since December, we now know what that looks like. We have got impacts on North Street. We've got impacts on Seymour. The piles are this high, folks. It ain't good. The influx of students anticipated will affect the life from September to May, with an uncertainty of actually what the plans are during the summer months. Got 80 people. These are minors. These are teenagers. High school, grades 9 to 12. Think about it. All of a sudden, you've got 80 people walking around your neighborhood that weren't there. Now we've got economic impact. The proposed dormitories, cafeteria, and boarding model limit the economic benefits to local restaurants and stores, as most needs are going to be met on site. The current retail mix in the downtown Port Hope area does not cater to the under 18 demographic expected in the Globe Cambridge High School. Spending patterns suggest migration out of Port Hope. They're not buying here, folks. They're not shopping, and there's local economic spin-offs which are minimal. Concerns are related to the loss of trust in heritage and potential reduction in home values for the community. That's big. Anybody interested in that? Property standards and safety. There is little current trust in the current owner. With maintained property standards for the dormitory based on history of neglect for 39 Pine Street, our heritage destination property, folks. The north-facing wall on North Street exhibits significant distress and damage, with no mention of repair or remediation in the landscape plan. Engineering's assessments are requested, especially given plans for a curb access to North Street. I'm 15 meters away, folks, from an entrance coming into my property. I'm not happy, and nor should you. Construction impacts. The building's history of vacancy and neglect has weakened confidence in the owner's stewardship. Construction impacts are significant, with recommendations for pre-construction engineering surveys for affected owners. Many properties on Brown Street rely on sump pumps, indicating groundwater sensitivity. Excavation and construction activities would affect the groundwater table and neighboring properties. I'm not an engineer. You guys got that figured out. In conclusion, from my assessment, and I've done a deep dive for 20 days, folks. I know what I'm talking about. There has not been one single application study that has been on your website, Municipality of Port Hope, that I haven't looked at. That's big. I got it down. My conclusion, and in summary, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZB02 2024 for a dormy at 39 Pine Street North raises substantial concerns regarding heritage preservation, community impact, environmental risks, traffic and operational disruption, limited economic benefit, property standards, which, by the way, are significant and probably come from 29 North Street. Freedom of Information Act was just released to me. You need to take a look at it. It's not good. And why I say it's not good, I woke up on January 19th and got a municipality headline from Mr. Admir. January 20th, I had an assumption. I wonder if they've actually cleaned the snow on 29 North Street East, a heritage designated property. Significance of that would be the evidence of snowbanks on both driveways facing our heritage designated property. There were none. The municipality cleans the sidewalk up north and across Pine. The municipality places snow at the entrance of the driveway. Folks, I placed a property standards report complaint on January the 22nd. If there was a fire at 39 Pine Street North, fire trucks would not have been able to access it. So we go through the process of the bylaw and we contact the owner. January 22nd, the snow did not get cleared until February the 3rd. This is a heritage designated property. If that doesn't wake you up, I don't know what does. You're not keeping care of what's important to our community. And it is our community that I am most concerned about. The municipality of Port Hope, my neighboring community, and quite frankly, my address.
Thank you.
It is recommended that the municipality of Port carefully consider these issues, conduct necessary assessments and studies, and prioritize the interest of residents and the preservation of Port Hope's historical character in its decision-making. Andrew Zondervan, 29 North Street. I reject the amendment.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'd appreciate it if we... Thank you. Is there any other comments from the public? I would also like to remind everyone to sign in, especially if you did come up, if you have an opportunity to sign in, put your contact information. Thank you for the public period, and we are moving on. I would like to now call a recess, and we will be coming back at 6:25. Thank you. Moving on, the second public meeting this evening is for an application regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, ZB 05-2025, under Section 34-10.4 of the Planning Act, submitted by Clark Consulting Services on behalf of the owners Scott and Crystal Longyear for lands municipally known as 7773 Longyear Lane in the rural area of municipality of Port Hope. I would like to note that council members are not here tonight to express their opinions for or against the proposed changes. The time for that will come when the matter is brought forward for consideration at a future meeting of the Committee of the Whole. So at this point, I'm going to ask the applicant to please make their presentation.
Well, I'm sorry that we lost the crowd. Not really. Thank you. My name is Bob Clark. I am the planner for this proposal. I'd like to introduce Crystal Longyear, who is here, and her mom and dad, Ross and Pat Longyear, are also with us. And they're certainly available to answer any questions that you may have. The application before you for the zoning bylaw is, I'll go to the next, see if this works. Yes, it does. I think you're aware of the location. It is the Ganaraska Road and north of the 7th line. And the location of the building is in the northern portion of this drawing. It fronts on the Longyear Lane, which is on the west side of the subject lands, and it's just above the pond. And you'll see in our concept plan that there's an indication of where the location. The next slide should be a proposal showing the buildings, and the buildings that are here. There is a new building being built, which is the building on the upper, I'm going to say east side, and that we're proposing. It is a new structure. The building itself is under construction. There have been some issues with regard to the building permit and some of the construction activities, but the intention is that it will become the primary dwelling for this farm. The existing residence is the ARU, which is lower there and more on the frontage on Longyear Lane, which is on the left side of the drawing here. And so that's an existing residence. It's the home of Scott the home of Ross and Pat, who are living there. And it's the new building will be Scott and Crystal's home, currently under construction. There's a storage building further to the south, and to the north there's a barn. And one of the challenges here, which we have identified, is that because these buildings are close to the road, each of them have an individual access, which means there's a proposal for 4 accesses. And as you can see, it would be somewhat difficult, given the topography and the location, to share some of these driveways. So we are proposing an individual access for each of these structures. And the owner's property is to looking at the zoning approval. We have looked at the zoning requirements. So the proposal is for the northern portion of the subject lands, which are actively farmed, to continue to be farmed, and it's an active farming operation. The 2 families will be directly involved in the farming operation. The buildings are located adjacent to a pond, and they consist of, as I've indicated, a garage, an older residence, a barn that's used for storage, and the second residence, which is in the final stages of construction. And the proposal is to recognize the second residence, and that's where the zoning requirement and review addresses. The planning issues that we've identified are that the new residence, we're proposing that become the primary residence for this farm operation to provide accommodation for Scott and Crystal and their son. And Scott's parents, who are here, live in the older residence, and it's proposed that become the additional residential unit. So we're kind of switching the primary and the additional residential unit, but it has to do with the nature of the construction and the proposed residential uses. The concerns that have been raised are about the compliance with the zoning provisions, and there are a number of zoning provisions that we wish to address through this zoning application. Our planning review has looked at the provincial planning statement, and obviously a second accessory residential unit is permitted for an active farming operation. The County of Northumberland official plan, again, there is a permission for an accessory residential unit, and your official plan also permits an accessory residential unit. And for this active farming operation, our issue comes down to the amendment required for the zoning bylaw to permit the residence and looking to see here what my notes say. We have the lands themselves are zoned agricultural. The property itself, as I've indicated in the subject lands, is a large property. The north half is designated and zoned agricultural. The south half is the rural or general, agricultural general designation. So the residence itself is in the active agricultural area, And the provisions that are provided for in the zoning bylaw talk about, in Section 2, the additional residential units. There is a detached accessory building which is allowed, which is what's proposed. There is a limit of 2 bedrooms, and we're seeking an exception for a 3rd bedroom because this is for a family. Basement is not permitted, but the accessory residential unit and the primary residential unit will both have basements. So we're looking for an exception there. And also there is a requirement for location of these buildings, residences, relative to each other. And we are, because of the nature of the property, we are farther away than the allowed limitation. So we're looking for an exception which will recognize the further exception between the two residential buildings. There are other regulations for accessory residential units, maximum floor area of 50% of the primary dwelling, and there is a limit of 80 square meters. The accessory residential unit, which is the existing residence, is 108 square meters, so there's an exception required there. And there are several zoning provisions relative to the various provisions with regard to access. There is a new septic system which has been installed and approved by the county, and it is of sufficient capacity in order to service both of the residential units, but its location means that there would be a rather long and extensive pipe to serve the accessory residential unit. So there is no existing connection, but there has been a review and approval by the county of the existing septic system being adequate for the accessory residential unit and the septic system that has been constructed to be constructed appropriately and to be approved. Also, we're looking for a permission of the 4th driveway, which I've indicated. In summary, our request is that the residential unit, which is currently under construction and received a building permit for that, be recognized as the primary residence and the existing residence be the accessory residential unit, that the residence under construction is for a farm family member who will be actively involved in the farm so that it qualifies. There's no actively used farmland that has been removed in order to accommodate the additional residential unit, and the residential is part of a cluster of structures on the farm, but admittedly some of the separation distances are longer because primarily because of the nature of the topography and on the property. So that's our submission, and we would welcome any questions and attempt to provide you with our answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. So I'm going to open up to council. Does
want this
council have
back?
any questions? Councillor Clare.
I'm going to ask now. I could very easily wait and ask staff as well. Just for my own understanding, the laneway, where the lot fronts onto this laneway, is that a privately owned and maintained road, or is that just a laneway named after the family that is a municipal road that's municipally maintained?
It's a municipal road. Okay. But yes, it has a limited traffic on that road.
Thank you. Any other questions from council right now? Seeing none. Okay, moving on to presentation by staff. So I'm going to ask the planning staff if they can make their presentation and introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair Pearson. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Daniel Lawler. I'm Planner 2 here at the municipality, and as previously mentioned, I'll be presenting on behalf of the municipality the zoning bylaw amendment file number ZB05-2025 as it relates to 7773 Longyear Lane. I'm going to approach the presentation. I'm going to try to avoid duplicating anything that Bob has covered, but rather try to provide some additional clarification and detail as necessary. So, in terms of subject area, I think Bob did a pretty good job of covering it all. I was just going to highlight, in terms of the official plan, the northern, essentially this property is cut in half. The northern portion of the site is designated prime agricultural, whereas the southern is designated general agricultural, and there is a water feature that does extend through portions of the site that are designated as natural environment and floodplain. Now, in terms of the zoning, in line with the way it's divided in the official plan, the northern portion of the property is designated agricultural, and the southern portion is designated rural. And again, in line with the waterway feature, it's zoned, or sorry, there is an environment protection floodplain overlay that applies to that particular section of the site. In terms of this proposal, I think just given the nature of it and how it's come to be, I think it's important to provide some detail as to the history to date of how we've gotten here. I note I have consulted with the municipality's building services team to just ensure that that our information is up to date. So a building permit application was submitted on October 12th, 2022 for the proposed ARU on the subject property. Now, when I say the proposed ARU, that is the new dwelling that is now on the property. At the time, it was proposed as an ARU. Planning staff reviewed the application material, which depicted that there were two garages on either side of the building, and both of those garages were to be unexcavated. So approval was given on October 20th, 2022 for that building permit. Framing inspection was conducted by a municipal building official in April 2023, which identified deficiencies essentially what was constructed wasn't aligning with the approved plans. Specifically, one of the garages had been excavated and had been internalized into the dwelling, which then incorporated, so at the ground floor level, it had incorporated 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, and at the basement level, it had become a laundry/service room, or understood to be a laundry/service room. So a subsequent order to comply was issued with the building division by the building division on April 19th. On the basis that the construction of the ARU was not in accordance with the plans on which the permit was issued, and there are legal proceedings that are ongoing in relation to that particular matter. And subsequently, a zoning bylaw application was submitted in July 2025. Now, this slide is just to give you a little bit of an indication of, I guess, again, context as to why we're here. So the left-hand side, the as approved, this is the ground floor showing that there were 2 garages on either side, the left and right-hand side of that ARU, and the as built showing that the left-hand side garage had been internalized into a habitable living area. So that's the ground floor. And then basement level, you'll see that the as-approved drawings show that the basement was supposed to be unexcavated on the left-hand side. And then as built, it's been internalized into habitable area. So in terms of the proposal, again, I think Bob was pretty clear in how it was defined. But again, I think, as I noted, the application was submitted in July 2025. Now, there were a number of iterations and back and forth to get to a complete application. And as a result of that, I guess the way the municipality is seeing this application is recognizing the newly constructed detached dwelling as the primary dwelling on the property. And that is because that particular building is approximately 305 square meters, and to permit the original detached dwelling on that dwelling to remain on the property as an additional residential unit with an approximate floor area of 108 square meters. Now, in terms of the proposed amendment and the site-specific exceptions that would be required. So that the proposal is requiring a partial rezoning of the subject property from agricultural A zone to a site-specific agricultural zone, which would permit the ARU through multiple variations to standards to the Port Hope zoning bylaw. And this would be to address the deficiencies that are shown on the screen there, and I'll go through them in a second. I do note attachment 3 to the public meeting report does contain a zoning compliance review that tries to capture what is complying, what's not complying. In terms of the key areas, section 4.2 of the zoning bylaw, which relates to additional residential units, and section 5.52, general parking provisions for ground-oriented residential dwelling units, including additional residential units, are the particular areas of focus in the zoning bylaw that require attention. So specifically, section 4.2.1.1F specifies that an ARU can have a maximum of 2 bedrooms. The proposal is seeking to have an ARU with 3 bedrooms. Section 4.2.1.1L requires an ARU in a detached accessory building that requires that a detached accessory building does not have a basement or other habitable living space below grade. The proposal is seeking permission for the basement level. Section 4.2.1.103 requires that an additional residential unit within a detached accessory building must be located within 40 meters of the building containing the primary dwelling unit. The proposal is seeking to permit an ARU that exceeds that 40-meter distance, in this case 56 meters. And section 4.2.14B requires the maximum gross floor area of the ARU within a detached accessory building shall not exceed 50% the gross floor area of the primary dwelling unit, but in no case greater than 80 square meters. So in this case, the 80 square meters is the high mark. The proposal seeks to permit an ARU exceeding that 80 square meters, in this case 108 square meters. And finally, there is section 5.52F, which specifies that a second driveway accessing the lot in a countryside zone may be permitted, provided the lot has a minimum lot area of 0.4 hectares. Now, as noted, there are currently four driveways that access this property. The final driveway, three of those driveways have been there for some time. The fourth driveway is associated with that new dwelling. So in order to recognize that new driveway, there would need to be acknowledgement in the zoning bylaw amendment to permit it. In terms of public consultation, public consultation was conducted through the Planning Act tools, including resident mail-out and on-site public notice signage. An additional non-statutory notification was provided through the municipal website. And you'll see the dates there that notice and signage was posted. In terms of next steps, the applicant will be required to address any public comments or public and agency circulation comments, and I know we have provided some comments already to the applicant, and responses will be prepared accordingly. Staff will subsequently begin preparation of a recommendation report that will take into consideration policy consistency and conformity, while also considering all the comments that are received. The recommendation report will then be reviewed at a committee of the whole meeting to decide the application to determine whether it should proceed to a council meeting for a final decision. The recommendation report will then proceed to a council meeting for a decision, and if approved, there would be a 20-day appeal period. Now, similar to our previous public meeting, there was, in terms of third-party appeal rights, Bill 23, which was introduced by the province, has removed appeal rights for nearby residents as it applies to ZBA applications, zoning bylaw applications. So that applies in this particular case. Only prescribed persons and specified bodies as defined under the Planning Act have the appeal rights for zoning bylaw amendment applications in Ontario. And those are specified under the Act, but they're typically they are utilities, agencies, and they're public bodies that are associated with planning. So that's all, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to open it up to council. Mayor Elena.
Thank you very much for both those presentations. My question is just a really simple one. I'm just wondering why the circularity in this application and why the applicant did not simply apply for a building permit originally for 305 meters squared.
I'm the home owner. When we moved out here, we did originally apply for an ARU. We submitted our plans with a basement, and that was approved. We, in error and in hindsight, excavated the smaller portion underneath that was not meant to be excavated. And but the basement plan, which makes it up to the 305 square meters, was approved in our building permit. In error, I guess, by the planning department, but that's what was approved to us, was that we were allowed to have this basement square footage.
Can I also get just a response from planning on this?
Through the mayor, I did not understand exactly, Crystal's point of view in terms of the basement how did it increase from 160 to 305.
Or the 80 square meters that we were meant to have, that was meant to be not have a basement. And when we submitted our application, it included a basement, and we were approved to have a basement. So then there was a small portion that turned into not unexcavated, that wasn't supposed to be excavated. And the upper portion, we opened it to, that was supposed to be a garage, we opened it into living space, thinking that because we had that square footage approved, that it didn't matter what the use was for, because the square footage was already approved. Does that make sense?
Through the mayor, so the approval was for only 160 meters, and it was only after the framing inspection that it was discovered that it was almost double to 305, and that's what the order to comply started.
Did put in for other inspections, and there was no building inspector to do those inspections. So we were told that we are to go ahead if there's no building inspector to come out within the 3 days, because there was no building inspectors employed.
Thank you, and through the chair. Unfortunately, I can't personally clarify what direction may have been provided to the property owners. Our chief building official is present, and I don't know if he has any context to add, but for clarification.
Through the chair, Mayor, a footing inspection was conducted November 9th, 2022. No backfill inspection was completed, and we don't have a record of one being requested. A framing was then done on April 14th, 2023, and that's when the deviation in construction was found.
Thank you for that. Moving on, Councillor Todd.
What was the purpose of having two separate drawings done, one with the as-built versus the original? Why did you have two sets done?
We had the second set done at the request of the planning department.
And was this done after?
Yes.
Because I was just looking at the dates. The dates are the exact same as when they were done, according to the drafting and design company?
I think he just amended it.
Okay.
And also to add, we did, in between having our order to comply, there were multiple correspondence between ourselves and the planning and the building and departments before we had to do the rezoning. Multiple correspondences and meetings.
I appreciate that. We're going to kind of keep the meeting going on this, though. Councillor Todd, please.
Thank you. This question's for staff. Dan, can you pull up the slide, proposed amendment, exception 159 zone? Yeah, this one. Would you mind just giving us as much as possible, because I appreciate you may not have the answers for all of this, as much as possible, can you give us maybe some of the justifications as to why basement levels are not permitted and why they have to be, 40 meters, and just maybe give us some of the context around these?
So in terms of, in terms of particularly 3 bedrooms, basement levels, the idea of ARUs is that they're supposed to be secondary to the primary dwelling. So if we're allowing 3 bedroom, or sorry, I should premise this on the fact that we are looking into our additional residential unit provisions, as you are aware. However, at the time of drafting, and generally consistent with best practice at the time, in order for a dwelling to be secondary to the primary dwelling, the approach of 2 bedrooms, basement level, and frankly, gross floor area are all there to kind of keep it as a secondary building to the primary dwelling. So that I mean, in a general sense, that's why those provisions are drafted the way they are. In terms of 40 meters, that came down to, or in many cases comes down to servicing, but also to ensure that we're not getting a pattern of almost like subdivision where you're getting dwellings on a single large piece of property well away from each other that starts to look like a separate lot type situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Through the chair, if I may, I'll provide just some additional clarification on the 40 meter as well. It's also an attempt to prevent the fragmentation of rural land uses, so farming practices, so that we cluster the residential dwellings in one location on the property to prevent that fragmentation.
Thank you, and thank you for that clarification. Any more questions from council? Councillor Les?
For staff, will the septic system work with this distance?
Through the chair, I'll ask the CBO to provide comment. I believe that there has been some initial plumbing review, septic review. I'll let the CBO answer this.
Through the chair, the plumbing sewage system will have been approved for the original square footage and bedrooms. I guess it depends on what the new layout looks like, and that would be something that the county would have to review again at a later date once we figure out what we're allowed to legally have on the property.
Understanding what was going on with the county, they would not let because of age of our septic bed, they wouldn't let anything more apply to it. So that's when our son and daughter-in-law, they decided to make a new septic system. And the county's very clear on that. They would not let us do that. So they've got their septic system, we have ours.
Appreciate. Any more questions from council on the zoning? No? Okay, thank you. Moving on to submissions from members of the public. So a reminder, as staff has already reminded, that the report outlines the changes in the Planning Act that have changed the public's ability to appeal a decision on zoning bylaw amendment applications to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Only the applicant, a specified person as defined by the Planning Act, a public body as defined by the Planning Act, and a registered owner of the land to which the bylaw would apply has the ability to appeal the eventual decision of the municipality of Port Hope to the Ontario Land Tribunal. This means that the residents' appeal rights for zoning bylaw amendments have been removed by the province. Members of the public may provide comments or questions related to this application tonight or any time prior to a decision being made by council. Please email planning@porthope.ca to provide your comments to staff if you do not provide them tonight. For all of those that wish to speak to this matter tonight, should you approach the microphone and clearly state your name and address for record, please. I also want to remind those in attendance, but especially those who are looking to speak tonight, to please ensure that you complete the sign-in sheet near the entrance. The sheet assists municipal staff as it provides a record of attendance and contact information if a copy of a notice of decision is requested. So at this time, I'll ask anyone from the public if they would like to make a comment. Okay, seeing none. I guess that concludes our meeting tonight, and I am in a position to adjourn this meeting at 7:01. Thank you, everyone.